Welcome back to the deep dive. You know, it's funny how some figures are just everywhere. Like, St. George. Dragon Slayer, right. On flags, coats of arms.
Absolutely iconic.
We all sort of know the image. But how much do we really know about the person? Or, well, the idea behind the legend?
That's a great question. It often feels like the legend overshadows any potential reality.
It's strange, isn't it? Someone so famous, yet almost fictional. It's a paradox.
It truly is. And that's precisely the challenge that Noel Joshua Hadley, the author we're looking at today, tackles. He dives right in with his provocative 7,000-year timeline deception thesis.
Right, Noel. He's definitely known for shaking things up.
He is. And he proposes to completely change how we see St. George. He argues George did exist historically, and maybe even more surprising, fits perfectly into this larger hidden history framework he's developed.
So he's pushing back hard against the just a legend idea.
Definitely. He's saying there's way more here than meets the eye.
Okay, so our mission for this deep dive is clear then. We're going to really dig into Noel's research, follow his breadcrumb trail, as he calls it.
Exactly. Through ancient texts, historical records, all of it.
Trying to uncover what Noel sees as the hidden reality behind George, his identity, his significance.
And it promises some, well, pretty surprising connections and ideas. We'll try to guide you through Noel's arguments, hit those aha moments without getting too bogged down, you know?
Sounds good. Let's dive in.
Okay.
So first off, just the sheer reach of St. George is kind of staggering when you stop and think about it.
It really is. Noel emphasizes this right away. Patron saint of cities like Venice, Genoa, Moscow.
And not just cities, whole countries, right. Aragon, Catalonia, Georgia, Lithuania, Palestine, Portugal, Ethiopia, England, of course.
The list goes on and on. It's genuinely global.
And speaking of England, that royal coat of arms, the lion and the unicorn.
Ah, yes.
Noel's written about that symbolism before, hasn't he? In things like The Lady and the Unicorn or T-Tiffany.
He has, extensively. He sees deep historical clues hidden in symbols like that, suggesting they're not just decorative, much like he argues for St. George.
Okay, so back to George himself. What's Noel's core claim about his existence?
Well, first off, he's very firm. Yes, St. George historically existed. And importantly, he says, no, he was not Jesus.
Right. Get that Sunday school answer out of the way, as he puts it.
Exactly. He wants to move past that immediately. Now, historians generally place George's death around April 23rd, 303 A.D.
During the reign of Emperor Diocletian.
That's the standard view. A martyr during the Diocletianic persecution, which was a really brutal crackdown on Christians in the Roman Empire.
But Noel takes it a step further, doesn't he?
Oh, much further. Here's where his 7,000-year timeline deception thesis really comes into play. He makes this audacious claim. Diocletian himself was the dragon George slayed.
Wow. Not just a symbol of Roman persecution, but the actual dragon.
For Noel, yes. It's a direct link, not just a metaphor. It ties into this whole hidden narrative he's exploring.
Okay, this is where it starts getting really wild. Because Noel doesn't just stop at saying George existed and Diocletian was the dragon.
No, he builds towards this central revelation, his unmasking, as he terms it.
Yes.
St. George is Elijah. Or, he says, maybe the spirit of Elijah. He often leaves that nuance, that exact interpretation, up for you to decide.
Elijah the prophet from the Bible.
The very same. He lays out this foundational connection. George, the dragon slayer, is a continuation of Elijah, the slayer of the priests of Baal.
Okay.
And he traces it even further back to Phinehas from the book of Numbers.
Yeah.
The one who acted with incredible zeal during that whole Baal Peor incident.
Phinehas, right, with the spear.
Exactly. Noel often uses the Hebrew Eliyahu for Elijah, by the way. And he even sort of hints that John the Baptist fits into this lineage, too.
So it's like this recurring spirit, the spirit of Elijah popping up on different missions when Yahweh, the divine will, requires it.
That's precisely the idea Noel presents. A consistent thread, a specific type of zeal and mission, reappearing across history under different names.
To really get a handle on that, we need to go back to Phinehas, right? Numbers 25.
Absolutely. That's the starting point for this particular lineage Noel traces. It's a pretty dramatic story.
Remind us of the context there.
Okay, so it happens right after Balaam, who Noel calls Moses' lifelong antagonist, fails to curse Israel for the king of Moab.
Right, the talking donkey stories around then, too.
Around that time, yeah.
Yeah.
So Balaam, having failed with the curse, switches tactics. He tempts the Israelites with Moabite women, whoring women, Noel quotes leading them to sacrifice to Baal Peor, or Baal Theodore, using Noel's transliteration.
And this leads to disaster.
A huge plague. 24,000 Israelites die. It's a moment of massive crisis.
Until Phinehas steps in.
Until Phinehas, Aaron's grandson, acts with this sudden, intense zeal. He grabs a spear, finds Zimri, an Israelite man, with Cosby, a Midianite woman, in the act, and thrusts the spear right through both of them.
Gruesome, but it stops the plague.
Instantly. And Noel mentions, actually, that his understanding here comes partly from his work translating numbers from Paleo-Hebrew with Pamela Glasgow. He emphasizes the meticulous research behind these connections.
So, for Noel, this isn't just a one-off act of zeal.
Not at all. He sees it as the archetype, the pattern. Battling idols. Baal Peor then. Elijah, fighting idol worship later. George supposedly facing Diocletian's idol factory. Even Solomon's temptations in the Testament of Solomon. It's all the same spiritual war for Noel.
That's quite a connection. But it's not just the zeal linking Phinehas and Elijah for Noel, is it? He brings in other texts.
Right. He doesn't just rely on thematic parallels. He points specifically to the Aramaic Targum, the Jonathan Targum on Numbers 25.8.
What does that say?
It gets really specific. It doesn't just recount the event. It details 12 distinct miracles that happened for Phinehas right then.
12 miracles? Like what?
Things like the mouths of Zimri and Cosby being miraculously shut so they couldn't scream, the spear staying fixed in place. Phinehas carrying them through the entire camp, 6 miles, the text says, without getting tired. Their blood thickening, them breaking forth for everyone to witness. It's incredibly detailed.
Way beyond just a historical account.
Exactly. Noel argues the Targum emphasizes these miracles over simple chivalry or bravery. Why? Because, he suggests, the transcriber recognized Eliyahu whenever he cropped up.
Implying they knew Phinehas was special, maybe lived longer than normal.
That's Noel's interpretation. That perhaps there was this subtle understanding that Phinehas lived a little too long, and this unusual longevity becomes a key piece of Noel's detective work.
So what evidence does he present for Phinehas living an extraordinarily long time?
He pieces it together from a few places. First, the book of Joshua Yahushua, 22.3034. Phinehas is still around, identified clearly as Eleazar's son, Aaron's grandson. He's mediating a major dispute between tribes.
Okay, so he's still active late in Joshua's time. Joshua lived to 110, right?
Yeah, and Noel figures that Phinehas was probably younger than Joshua, but still, active leadership late in life, that's already notable.
But there's more.
Oh, yes. The real kicker, the quandary, as Noel puts it, is in the book of Judges, chapter 20, verses 27-28. Phinehas appears again, still serving before the Ark of the Covenant. Noel calculates his appearance is roughly 336 years after his appearance in Joshua.
336 years later, how does conventional history explain that?
It generally doesn't, or it assumes multiple figures with the same name or textual issues. Noel challenges that directly. He says, look, the text presents him as the same person. This isn't a normie book, he argues. It suggests something extraordinary is going on with certain figures.
Okay, that's a biblical anomaly for sure. Does he find support outside the main biblical canon?
He does. He brings in rabbinical texts like Pseudo-Philo in the Legend of the Jews, LOTJ. Pseudo-Philo, for instance, says Yahaha told Phinehas, or Pinchas, when he was 120, to basically go live in the desert on a mountain.
Live in the desert, like Elijah.
Exactly. And get this. Pseudo-Philo says he'd be fed by an eagle.
Like Elijah being fed by ravens.
The parallel is striking. And Pseudo-Philo also says Phinehas would shut up the heaven and open it again, the signature miracle of Elijah.
Wow.
And maybe the most crucial part, Phinehas was told he would not die then, but would return later, be tested, and then finally get a taste of death.
Which sounds like the end-time prophet traditions.
Precisely. Noel sees this as clear textual evidence for Phinehas not dying conventionally, but entering a state of longevity, awaiting a future return, essentially becoming Elijah.
This whole idea of an immortal figure, Noel addresses the debates around that, right? Like Rabbi Levi ben Gershon.
He does. He mentions Gershon's logic, that proposing one immortal person, Phinehas Elijah, is simpler, maybe better, than proposing 2 separate immortal people, Phinehas and Elijah.
One peculiar postulate is better than 2.
Right. But Noel kind of playfully pushes back. He gives it a bad review, jokingly references Highlander. He points out other potential immortals mentioned in text, Melchizedek, Enoch, maybe Metatron.
So if there's one, why not more?
That's Noel's counter. He thinks Gershon's argument, while trying to link Phinehas and Elijah, might accidentally open the door to a broader pattern. If immortality is possible for one, it's more likely for others too. It definitely helps set the stage for Elijah reappearing later as George.
It's fascinating how Noel weaves this specific Elijah thread into his much bigger picture, that 7,000-year timeline deception idea.
Absolutely. It's central to it. The core of that thesis is that our standard historical timeline is, well, deceptive. It hides major prophetic fulfillments.
Like the end of the world already happening.
Essentially, yes. He argues it occurred around 6,000 years AM, Anno Mundi, years after creation, with the Messiah arriving 5,500 years after Adam. This puts the millennial kingdom, that 1,000-year reign of peace, roughly between 30 AD and the 530s AD.
Not in the future, but in the past.
In the past. A time frame he explores in detail in books like 536 AD, Year of the Fire Reset, 537 AD, The End of Camelot, 541 AD, the Year of the Apocalypse, and even Muhammad and the millennial kingdom.
Wow. Okay, so how does Elijah fit into that specific timeline?
Noel points to a really key passage from the Targum on Exodus 6:8. It explicitly says about someone from Levi's line. He lived to see Phinehas, who is Eliyahu, the great priest, who was to be sent to the captivity of Israel at the end of the days.
Phinehas, who is Eliyahu, that's pretty direct.
Extremely direct. And Noel finds it very suspicious that historically Phinehas and Elijah are never contemporary, never seen in the same room together, so to speak.
He sees a pattern of return, but under new names.
Exactly. Eliyahu keeps coming back for these missions, but always with a completely new name, George being the later one.
Now, you might think ancient figures, even say Satan, would expect Elijah to return as Elijah. Does Noel address that?
He does, using the Questions of Bartholomew text. In it, Satan apparently thinks the Messiah, Yeshua, might be Elijah or Enoch returned.
Okay.
But the Prince of Sheol corrects him, saying essentially, not yet, the 6,000 years aren't up. Noel reads this as a clue. It suggests even Satan wasn't expecting them under their original names, which for Noel opens the door to the idea of reincarnation, or at least some form of spiritual return under a new identity, at least for some, specifically Elijah and Enoch. It complicates the simple idea of a named return.
So what was Elijah's big mission in this framework, especially around that millennial kingdom period Noel proposes?
Well, Noel says his own understanding evolved. He first thought Elijah might have been some kind of general leading uprisings, like in his Word, the Sons of Light versus the Sons of Darkness book.
But he moved away from that.
Yeah, he now sees a more specific role that he believes perfectly mirrors what St. George did.
Based on what texts?
He uses the Targum on Lamentations 4.22. It describes Elijah working closely with the Messiah, freeing Zion from Rome, leading to Rome's destruction by other powers.
Directly involved in liberation and judgment.
Yes. And then Deuteronomy 30.4-8 in the Targum details Elijah's role in gathering the dispersed Israelites from all over the world, bringing them to the Messiah into the land, transforming their hearts.
Okay, that sounds like a massive undertaking.
Huge. And Noel argues this role doesn't fit John the Baptist, who mainly prepared people already in Judah.
But it fits.
Eliyahu, in this example being St. George, Noel says, preparing the way for the culmination of that 6,000-year prophecy around the 500s AD during Noel's proposed millennial kingdom.
Now, what about the objection that Israel wasn't physically regathered into the modern land of Israel during that time? That's a big one for many people.
Noel tackles that head on. He references his works like The Rod of Power and Excalibur and The Hidden Wilderness. He argues the Promised Land isn't just the modern geography.
What is it then?
He describes it as a terrestrial paradise, the blessed land of medieval lore. And those resurrected into it do follow the commandments because the Torah is written on their hearts. It's a different kind of fulfillment, spiritual and perhaps geographically distinct.
And he sees visual clues for this too, in art.
Yeah, this is fascinating. He points out paintings where the resurrected Messiah holds a rod or staff, and its ensign, its banner, is a tav, St. George's cross.
Not just a coincidence for Noel.
No way. He sees it as artists dropping clues, showing George was central to rallying Israel for the impending resurrection, a visual shorthand for this hidden history.
Okay, we've got Phinehas to Elijah, Elijah to George, but what about John the Baptist? That connection seems strong in standard interpretations, but Noel finds it problematic.
He calls it a theological pretzel. The main issue is Hebrews 9.27. Man is only appointed to die once.
Right. And John the Baptist was beheaded.
Exactly. So if John is Elijah, who traditionally didn't die but was taken up, how does that work? Plus, Noel adds, some accounts say St. George himself died many times. It complicates that die once verse significantly.
Yet the link between John and Elijah seems explicit in the New Testament.
It does. Noel acknowledges Malachi 3.1-5, I will send my messenger, is almost universally applied to John. Mark's gospel makes the connection right at the beginning.
And Luke says John will go forth in the spirit and power of Elijah.
Right. But Noel points out that specific phrasing, spirit and power of, is itself debated. Does it mean he is Elijah or just like Elijah?
And Jesus himself says regarding John, if you will receive it, this is Elijah.
He does in Matthew 11. But Noel highlights Jesus' warning, if you will receive it, suggesting it's a difficult concept. Is it literal reincarnation or just spiritual fulfillment, especially since John lived a normal human life cycle from birth?
But doesn't John himself deny being Elijah?
That's the pivot Noel emphasizes. In the Gospel of John, when asked directly, are you Elijah? John says flat out, I am not. He also denies being that prophet.
How does Noel interpret that denial?
He argues John isn't denying the Malachi prophecy fulfilled in him. He's clarifying he's an Elijah type, fulfilling it in a way not commonly understood. This distinction, Noel says, paves the way for the coming of Eliyahu at a future time.
Like in the Revelation 11, 2 witnesses prophecy.
Exactly, where Elijah is expected to return alongside Enoch.
So this leads to Noel's double prophecy idea, clarified by the Gospel of Nicodemus.
Yes, he found this text particularly clarifying. Initially, a passage about the Messiah delivering Adam into terrestrial paradise seemed to contradict his theory.
How so?
Because if Elijah was immortal in paradise, how could he also be John, who died and, in another part of Nicodemus, appears in Sheol?
Oh.
But then another passage in Nicodemus, 20.2-4, explicitly describes two ancient men in paradise, Enoch and Elijah the Tishbite, who have not tasted death and are waiting to return for the final battle against Antichrist.
So Elijah is explicitly shown as not having died, separate from John.
Precisely. Contrast that with Nicodemus 13, where John the Baptist is shown in Sheol after his death. Noel's conclusion. John and Eliyahu being two distinct souls.
That's the double prophecy. John as the Elijah-type forerunner, Elijah himself remaining immortal for a later return, potentially as George.
That's Noel's resolution. It allows both prophecies to be true in their own way.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly. Noel brings in another figure, Al-Khidr, from Islamic tradition.
Yes, he sees Al-Khidr as another applicant, as he puts it, for this recurring Elijah clothing rack.
And he mentioned something about Wikipedia changing its description.
Yeah, he found that interesting. He noticed the entry changed from saying Al-Khidr was described, though unnamed, in the Quran's Surah Al-Kahf, to just calling him a folk figure.
Yeah.
Noel saw this as possible gaslighting, a subtle downplaying, maybe in response to his research connecting Al-Khidr more directly.
Interesting. So, who is Al-Khidr and why the connection?
He's described as this mysterious, wise figure, sometimes an angel, sometimes a prophet. He guards the sea, teaches secret knowledge, helps people in distress, traits that strongly imply immortality and overlap with Enoch and Elijah.
But the key for Noel is the syncretism.
Exactly. He calls it the smoking gun.
Yeah.
Historically, Al-Khidr is syncretized, blended, with St. George in the Levant and Asia Minor. He's identified with Elijah by the Druze and with John the Baptist in Armenia.
Wow. That's direct overlap across tradition.
Huge overlaps. Noel finds it incredibly significant. He even suggests that some Jewish traditions identifying Al-Khidr with Samael, a fallen angel figure, might be an attempt to dismiss the Islamic version as counterfeit because the parallels to Elijah are too strong.
And the name Al-Khidr itself, the green one.
Yes, from the Arabic root for greenery, verdure. Noel connects this everywhere. Green was supposedly Muhammad's favorite color, linking to Noel's work on early Christian variants. John the Baptist is often depicted in green. Noel sees green as the color of resurrection, new life. Al-Khidr also means paradise.
And George's name Georgos, farmer.
Meaning earth worker. Noel suggests this points to George being about more than just dragon slaying, about cultivation, life, connecting to the earth.
He links this greenness to the green man motif too.
He does. In his work on the green man, Noel connects him to Adam, the second Adam, Christ, and the fruits of resurrection. Green symbolizes summer, new life, even the age of Pisces in Noel's timeline. Including Al-Khidr Elijah in this green symbolism really strengthens the interconnectedness for Noel.
What about the Quranic story in Surat Al-Kahf, the cave? Al-Khidr isn't named, but it's understood to be him.
That's the general understanding, yes. It's the story where he travels with Moses or Mashaha, as Noel prefers.
And Al-Khidr performs these confusing, seemingly immoral acts.
Right. Three main ones. He damages a boat.
To save it from being seized by a king.
He kills a young boy.
To spare his devout parents future grief and ensure they get a better child.
And he repairs a wall for free in an inhospitable town.
To protect a hidden treasure for orphans until they're old enough.
Exactly. Noel's takeaway is that Al-Khidr acts as this angelic enforcer, seeing beyond time. His actions show that the divine plan, Al-Hayam, works for good, even if it looks baffling or unjust to us in the moment. Patience and trust are needed.
And incredibly, Noel points out that Al-Khidr and Elijah share almost the exact same story in the Jewish legend of the Jews.
It's remarkable. He details the account with Rabbi Joshua ben Levi accompanying Elijah. Elijah makes him promise not to ask questions.
And then does strange things.
Kills a poor man's only cow, rebuilds a wall for a rich miser.
And the explanations are the same. The cow as a substitute sacrifice for the man's wife. The wall rebuilt to hide treasure from the unworthy rich man.
Precisely the same underlying logic. And Elijah delivers the same moral. Don't judge God's justice based on surface appearances of prosperity or suffering.
Noel mentions another story, too, with clowns and a prison guard.
Yes, with Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka. Elijah points out unlikely people a guard, two jesters who will be saved because of hidden virtues, like easing sorrow or making peace, even in unexpected ways.
So the conclusion is the same across traditions.
For Noel, yes. Elijah Al-Khidr is this heavenly agent operating beyond time, whose actions require patience and contemplation from us. He even notes artwork showing them praying together, acknowledging the denominational differences, but stressing the shared core.
And he found a physical place where they're linked. A monastery.
An Amma Azining discovery, as he puts it. A monastery in the West Bank, dedicated to both Al-Khidr and St. George. It was known locally as Deir Marjurius, St. George, or Deir Al-Khidr. The locals saw them as the same.
That's incredible. Tangible evidence of that syncretism.
And Noel, being Noel, he also mentions the nearby Dome of Al-Khidr, also called the Dome of St. George, a hexagonal structure. He playfully suggests it looks capable of holding a slightly smaller engine, hinting at his ideas about ancient structures having energetic purposes.
Okay, let's get back to that dragon. Noel challenges the standard timeline where the dragon appears late in the George legend, right?
He does. He points out the earliest accounts, 4th, 5th century, don't mention a dragon. He jokes the official story has more holes than a bowl of Fruit Loops, suggesting deliberate changes or missing pieces.
So where's the dragon come from, in Noel's view?
Well, even sources like the Catholic Encyclopedia, which confirm George's historicity based on early cults, admit the dragon was a later interpolation, added centuries later.
But Noel has his answer.
Diocletian. The persecuting emperor is the dragon. The timing fits perfectly. The Diocletianic persecution of 303 AD, aimed at Christians, especially soldiers like George was said to be.
So the dragon was there from the start, just in human form.
That's the argument. He links Diocletian to the Nero Redivivus idea, the return of a great evil ruler. He mentions the huge number of Christians then, maybe 6 million, and the wildly different estimates of martyrs, 2,000, 60,000, showing how messy the history is.
And he lists many martyrs.
Yes, and asked provocatively, were these the millennial kingdom kings and priests mentioned in Revelation, with George as the most prominent leader among them in this spiritual war?
What about Eusebius, the early church historian? He wrote only about a decade after George's supposed death.
Right, Eusebius, Constantine's historian, or propagandist as Noel calls him. His ecclesiastical history is a key early source.
Does he mention George?
He mentions an unnamed but most highly honored individual who publicly tore down Diocletian's anti-Christian decree in Nicomedia and was martyred for it.
Unnamed, but Noel says.
Unquestionably George. The description, especially the fiery zeal, perfectly matches the Phinehas Elijah archetype for Noel.
But why unnamed?
That's the mystery. Noel finds it suspicious. He also points out a potential chronological oddity in Eusebius about another figure, Dorotheus, suggesting maybe Eusebius was being careful or embedding codes. He even argues Eusebius might have implicitly referred to George through another name mentioned, Gorgonius, due to linguistic links. Gorgo meaning fierce, head of guard. It's like looking for clues between the lines.
Okay, now the famous story George, the princess, the dragon, the white horse, the version everyone knows.
The iconic image. Noel notes the variations the different locations claimed, Beirut, Oxfordshire, Cappadocia originally.
But the version from Jacobus Vorgien's Golden Legend from the 1270s is key.
Very key. It sets the scene in Cyrene, Libya, and includes all those classic elements. The dragon's poisonous breath, the casting of lots for children, the princess being chosen, George arriving in the name of Jesus Christ.
And crucially, he doesn't kill it right away.
No. He pacifies it with the maiden's girdle, leads it into the city, preaches, demands they get baptized, then kills it. 15,000 convert, a church with living water springs up. It's packed with symbolism.
How does Noel read this version?
He notes the dragon isn't explicitly Satan here. He connects the king demanding the sacrifice to Diocletian, the dragon maybe to an idol, even if Diocletian was the dragon, and George as the only one zealous enough to act.
And that detail about leading the dragon into the city, that connects to gargoyles.
Yes. Noel finds that oddly familiar. It directly links to his work, Gargoyles and Grotesques, where St. Romanus does something similar with the gargoyle monster in Rue. Noel wonders if Romanus is a composite figure or if Jacobus mixed up stories.
So what do gargoyles represent for Noel?
More than just waterspouts. They represent the slain, decapitated dragon now spewing living water. A complete reversal of the Revelation image of the serpent spewing water to destroy. It's transformation, cleansing.
That ties into Merlin's prophecy too, the white dragon defeating the red.
Exactly. George, always on a white horse, or with a white covering with his cross, signals his allegiance. The dragon threatens the maiden, the church, at the water, but is subdued and becomes a source of life under the Tav George's ensign, the covenant mark.
And the Libya setting. Any specific meaning there for Noel?
He speculates, maybe connects to the Vandals, whom he thinks were Israelites, liberating Libya from Rome, fitting his War of the Sons of Light theme. Or maybe the Crusades. Or maybe he allows it was just a literal dragon slaying. He keeps possibilities open.
Let's talk more about that ensign, the symbol George used. Noel sees it as central.
Absolutely central. The ensign Eliyahu used to rally the nations. He connects it to his work on Tefi, the Templars. It's no secret the Templars used St. George's cross. Noel argues George united these powerful symbols.
Especially the lion and the unicorn.
Yes. Deuteronomy 33 identifies the unicorn with Ephraim and Manasseh, Joseph's sons. Revelation 5 identifies the lion with Judah.
So putting them together means?
For Noel, it's a clear statement. Yehuda and Yasharel will return together into the same sheepfold, just as Scripture promised. Unity. He links it directly to Isaiah 11's prophecy of an ensign gathering both houses of Israel, ending their old rivalry. A reunited partnership.
And the X-cross, the saltire on Scotland's flag.
A bold theological statement. Noel points to Genesis 48, where Jacob, Israel, deliberately crosses his hands in an X shape to bless Ephraim and Manasseh, a prophetic act.
And he sees this X everywhere.
He lists tons of flags with saltires, St. Andrew's Cross, St. Albans, Jamaica, Burgundy, Russian Navy, even the Confederate flag, which he said really messed me up and made him rethink some things.
He connects it to St. Andrew.
Yes, Andrew, the first called apostle.
Yeah.
Noel interprets Andrew's X-cross as symbolically reaching out, just like Jacob did to Ephraim and Manasseh, showing Israel awakened all across the earth.
And the X itself connects to the Hebrew letter Tav.
This is crucial. In ancient Paleo-Hebrew, Tav was an X, or cross shape. It means mark, specifically the mark of the covenant, used to mark sheep, and it stood for Torah.
So George's cross is the ancient covenant mark.
That's Noel's powerful argument. It's encoded with meaning.
And we see this ensign in action in depictions of George.
Consistently. Official history links it to Crusaders, Templars. Illuminations always show George with his Phinehas lance, leading a charge, often from paradise or heaven, spearing a red dragon from his white horse. The white horse or white covering with the cross is constant. Noel insists this isn't coincidence, it's metaphor.
And the symbol is global.
England, Georgia, Italy, Canada, Spain, all over. The UK flag is a composite of George's, Andrew's, the X, and Patrick's crosses. Noel says it nearly has it all, including the Tav. The covenant people couldn't slap enough covenant marks on their rallying ensign.
He even found a painting linking the Messiah directly to this ensign.
Yes, an image of the Messiah resurrecting or freeing souls from Sheol, clearly associated with St. George's ensign. And significantly, John the Baptist is shown in the corner. Noel sees it as yet another clue dropped by artists about George's true identity and role.
Okay, now we have to delve into that martyrdom of St. George manuscript Noel uses. He warns it's pretty intense.
Extremely intense. Gruesome and bloody, he calls it. Totally alien to our modern mindset. Like watching Gibson's Passion but having Jesus die, come back and get mutilated repeatedly. Mutilation, death, rise to life, rinse, and repeat. It's jarring, but holds key insights for Noel.
The manuscript itself is dated quite late, right?
Right.
956 AD official time.
Yes, the Vatican parchment says Year of the Martyrs 672, which is 956 AD, but Noel argues the huge gap from George's time, 303 AD, means it must be a copy of a much older text, preserving an ancient tradition, which he says works to our advantage.
How does the manuscript describe the persecution under Diocletian?
It calls it a severe storm. Says Dedianus gained dominion over the four quarters of the earth, the tetrarchy. He issues edicts, demands worship of approved gods, lists horrific torture instruments, vows bitter sufferings. It was so bad, people renounced Christianity for 3 years.
And George enters the scene how?
As a tribune from Cappadocia, the son of truth, he gives up everything, wealth, rank, confronts the governors, challenges their frenzied idolatry.
And Dedianus confronts him.
The dragon, the text calls Dedianus. George declares himself Christian, then baits him, asking which gods he should worship: Peter, Apollo, and then drops in Elijah the Tishbite as an angel upon earth.
Elijah again. And Noel's take on Dedianus here.
Not just evil, but a reptilian, Noel says. George could see his true nature. The 70 governors represent cosmic rulers over Earth's regions. George challenging them for 7 years fits a tribulation pattern, aligning with the 8-year persecution. And George calling Elijah an angel is significant.
The text describes George dying and being resurrected repeatedly.
Yes. After brutal torture, Dedianus orders his bones thrown in a dry pit. An earthquake signals heavenly warfare.
And the Messiah intervenes.
Personally, Yahshua appears on a chariot of the cherubim, tells Michael to gather the bones, breathes life back into George.
And George immediately goes back.
Straight back to Dedianus, proclaiming, "I am George, whom you slew yesterday." Then he casts down idols, declares war on the pagan gods. Noel contrasts this power with Solomon, who couldn't permanently banish spirits like George does here.
It leads to a fiery climax.
Absolutely. Dedianus writes the death sentence, signed by the 70 governors. George, facing death with gladness, prays for fire from heaven, like the servant Elijah the prophet, to consume the governors and 5,000 soldiers. And it happens.
Wow. And then come divine promises.
Yahshua appears in the sky with a heavenly host, promises George 7 crowns of glory, a royal crown and exalted throne. Crucially, his name will be a haven of safety. Anyone crying, "O God of George, help us," 3 times will be heard. Rewards for honoring him are detailed.
And he's compared to John the Baptist.
Yahshua declares none born of women greater than John, but among martyrs, none like unto thee, George. Noel sees this, affirming George as a supreme prophet of Yahshua, embodying the spirit of prophecy.
Does this kick off the millennial kingdom?
Noel concludes, not the end. Yahshua prophesies more persecution coming after a short time lasting 21 years, which Noel links to Jacob's trouble and Nero Redivivus. George's final task is yet to come: return to destroy the impious governor, the final boss. Then the world serves the Messiah freely forever. This, Noel says, explains why George's shrines were built during the past millennial kingdom.
And the most direct clue, George himself says he died how many times?
Right at the end of the narrative, George recounts having died 3 times for the name of our Lord Jesus Christ.
Which Noel connects directly to.
Phinehas, Eliyahu, and George. 3 lives, 3 deaths, or near-death resurrections. It directly answers the Hebrews 9.27 objection for Noel. George has died before, through his previous incarnations. It seals the argument.
Okay, so George is Elijah. But Revelation speaks of 2 witnesses, often identified as Elijah and Enoch. If George is Elijah, who is Enoch's counterpart?
Noel admits he struggled with this initially. When he first presented the George-Elijah link, identifying Enoch's partner was the missing piece.
Until a reader suggested someone.
Yes, a reader named Meredith suggested St. Theodore. Noel said it was like a light bulb moment, wondering how he'd missed it, maybe because Theodore is less remembered now. But the evidence, he argues, is right there in the art. Theodore is often almost indistinguishable from George.
St. Theodore, what are the parallels?
They're striking. Theodore lived and died during the same Diocletianic persecution, early 4th century. A contemporary, he was venerated alongside George very early on, late 4th century, became a major warrior saint.
And depicted as a dragon slayer.
Yes. From the 7th century or earlier, his iconography, horseman, spear, dragon, is widespread, just like George's. Noel points to a 9th, 10th century fresco showing Theodore slaying a dragon, and Noel also sees signs of 536 melted city there. He jokes they like to ride out on dragon hunts together.
Even holding similar symbols?
An early image from Macedonia, 6th, 7th C, shows Theodore holding a Draco standard, a Roman dragon banner, which Noel connects to Merlin's prophecy again, and as Noel emphasizes, visually they often get mixed up, even in Google searches.
So Noel sees Theodore as a kind of doppelganger, maybe from Michael the Archangel.
That's the idea. Michael is also a dragon slayer, and Noel notes Michael reminds me of Phinehas too. He thinks the artists were creating a visual code.
A correlation between events.
Exactly. George and Theodore slaying the dragon on Earth mirrors Michael slaying Satan in heaven. It connects the earthly battle to the cosmic one. He mentions a fresco at St. Catherine's where Theodore kills a dragon, but George kills a human. Noel says it's essentially the same thing because George was a reptilian slayer fighting the entity behind the human.
So wrapping this all up, what does Noel's deep dive mean for us? It's a huge reevaluation.
It really is. He's asking us to see St. George not just as a legend, but as this recurring spirit Elijah, rooted in Phinehas' zeal, fighting spiritual and literal dragons, paving the way for the Messiah, part of a much grander, hidden historical narrative.
It certainly challenges conventional history and theology.
Absolutely. Noel connects ancient texts, biblical figures, historical events, all through this millennial kingdom lens, arguing there's a hidden reality, profound truths beneath the surface if we just look differently.
And he leaves us with a final thought about gargoyles.
Yeah, they're far more meaningful than we think. If George turned the destructive dragon into a source of cleansing, life-giving water.
What other monsters in our stories or even current events could be transformed?
Exactly. If we apply that patience and contemplation Noel talks about, looking past apparent contradictions, maybe we can see deeper meanings, those hidden ensigns, pointing towards a more profound reality. It's an invitation to revisit the familiar and look for those hidden marks.